That's what they want you to believe. You and I, people who have been holding and buying the stock for the last 2.5 years, and even more for some of us, that AMC stock will never hit a certain level. $10, for example, even more so 20, 25. Maybe the short squeeze will never ever happen because it's already in the past. Well, in this video, I want to look at some facts. I want to share with you some 3 catalysts that I see happening as soon as this week, which can ultimately, push the narrative in our favor, because there is no reason why the stock is down almost 100%. Almost 20% in 1 week without any news at all justifying this major drop, especially with the market rallying for the last 4 to 6 weeks. All right. So the first thing that we have to look into is, has anything changed about AMC as a company? So the whole rationale, the whole reason why short sellers came into AMC was because it was supposed to file bankruptcy. But since many quarters now, since many months now, the company has shown strength upon strength upon strength. And I do believe we're going to see that tomorrow when they do report earnings for the third quarter of 2022. These earnings will show that the company, at least in my opinion, and what the market expects, that the company will still continue to make big money. We know the market expects at least $900 million in revenue just for this quarter. We're talking about $1 billion just for this quarter. Does that sound like a company who was supposed to file bankruptcy, or was the brink of filing bankruptcy? No, not at all. And then we also going to show some strength when it comes to what the next quarter or next year is going to look like for AMC as a company. So I think this is going to show us that, hey, this company is not what the share price looks like. And this is the big catch, especially for those of us who've been waiting for the short squeeze to happen here. Why? Because the share price, it's supposed to show the value of a company, but sometimes there is a big gap, there is a big discount. And that's where it's very interesting for people who have big money in times like this, where, the market is really uncertain and it doesn't matter whether you're shorting or buying, it's really tricky to make money. Because when AMC shows earnings tomorrow, and they're positive and they are beating expectations, which I believe they're going to do so, well, it's going to bring attention to some people who think, looking for places to park the money, at least until the next deep recession is confirmed or not. And AMC is a pretty good candidate. All right. So that's catalyst number 1, coming as soon as tomorrow. Next thing, we do have elections also happening tomorrow. And here, I want also to kind of back what I just mentioned when it comes to at least a short-term rally happening in AMC trade. Why? Because midterms somehow tend to always bring a market rally, even with the Fed in the middle of hiking interest rates to fight inflation. What am I talking about? Well, we took at some history. We looked at some charts, and we can turn history for at least once a day. So one thing we do know for sure is that stocks go up in the 12 months after a midterm election, as my colleague Cara Mosey reports. This is reports based on data for the last 20, 30 years. Every time we do have midterm elections, stocks always go up the following year. All right. Now, let me share with you another interesting catalyst. According to Sam Stovall, he's the chief strategist of CFRA, the Fed was in rate hike mode in the midterm years of 46, 58, 94, and 2018. And stocks averaged 13% gain in the 12 months following. All right. So another fact based on history backing up that we might have a rally here happening for the broader market. Now, he also pointed out that stocks have climbed 84% of the time in the fourth quarter of an election year here. So again, we are in the brink of potentially getting into a short-term rally, which can coincide with what we call the Santa Claus rally, which is kind of closing the year here. Now, let me also share this article with you, coming from Morgan Stanley, one of the biggest banks on Wall Street and in the US. This is coming from the chief strategist. He's one of, has been ranked or named the top institutional investor, portfolio strategist. So he's saying, we remain tactically bullish on US equities, on risk events for bonds, November Fed meeting, October late inflation data, and then he's pointing out to the S&P 500, which can be, seen as the overall broader market continue to range with the top target 4,000 to 4,150 points as we get into end of this year. That will represent another 5 to 6% jump from where we are right now. All right. And then we also have the CPI data. So CPI data will show inflation numbers for the month of October, right? Now we have this Nobel Prize economist, Paul Krugman. He says that the true US inflation may have cooled to below 4% and points to falling rental prices and slowing wage as growth to show proof of what actually he's, pointing, that inflation may have cooled if we look at the real data, looking at rental prices coming back down in 61 big cities, part of the top 100 cities in the US, and wages growth also slowing down significantly. Usually, those are two major signs that inflation may also be fading more significantly. So I guess going into the CPI data that will be released on Thursday this week, we might be in for a pretty big surprise. Now, how does all of these things, impacts AMC stock? Well, we've seen many times now that short sellers, right, have been piling up on the market as a whole because recession fears, inflation hiking interest rate, etc., right? Now, let me show you something else that may actually point out to something which will be very, very beneficial for us holding AMC stock. According to Reuters, hedge funds are also capitulating on the Fed pivot because they were kind of expecting that the Fed will pivot as soon as, November or October, and it didn't. So as a result, we are now sitting on a 2 years high when it comes to short positions. Look, according to the CFTC, this is the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, they report that speculators or traders increased their net short positions in the 2-year Treasury futures in the week of November 1st by 88,000 contracts to a record net short position of 437,000 contracts. In other words, people are piling up shorting a specific sector of the market, waiting that there's going to be this rally coming up. All right. So if short sellers are kind of capitulating and expecting a short to rally because they are shorting the stock, the bond market, you short the bond market when you expect stocks and equities to go up, or, at least prices or yields to go down. All right. So if everything is kind of pointing to that, it means that people who have been shorting AMC and are still doubling down with no evidence supporting the reason why it makes sense to be shorting AMC, with earnings coming up tomorrow, with the election coming up tomorrow, and with CPI data pointing to inflation slowing down as everybody expected to be, then it might be time for some of them to start going out, and we might be in the lows of AMC we've seen so far this year. Nothing guaranteed because nobody can guarantee what the future will hold, but at least these are pointing to events that will push people that are shorting to get out sooner rather than later and in a brutal way. So we can expect, based on this, pretty a contrarian view on people saying that, well, AMC is dead, or thinking AMC is dead and will never reach certain levels. But if we do see these, then I do believe we might see that happening because, as I mentioned, there is no justifiable, objective, logical reason why AMC stock and Ape stock will continue to be, going down as they are, with nothing making sense of it whatsoever.